all right, we have scouted these rookies. We know their landing spot.
Yes.
And now we want to make some bold predictions. We want to talk about rookies that will break out in year one. All right. From day dot. It might not be week one, but at some point during the season, these rookies will break out.
Correct.
We're going to give you 2 players each. Okay. And we're going to define what that breakout really means, because a breakout will look different for a couple other players. So we tried to choose a couple first rounders, a couple second rounders, and there's some more obvious names on this list that we did not choose, a la Drake London, for example. Okay. All right. My first rookie breakout, Treylon Burks. Okay. See this guy going anywhere as high as 103 in rookie drafts. He's falling to 106 in rookie drafts. It really just depends. But let's talk about how I would define a breakout. I'll give you upside numbers and floor numbers for A.J. Brown this season, okay? Let's talk about the upside first. I think the upside, and I know this is crazy, but bear with me for a second. The upside is 85 receptions on 130 targets, 1,100 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
Okay.
That would equate to the wide receiver 12 finish this last year, okay? Here's his floor, though, okay? His floor is 70 receptions on 110 targets, 850 yards through the air, and 6 touchdowns, which would equate to the wide receiver 29, according to last year's standings, okay?
Right.
So I think there's a really safe floor here, what I've presented, and I think the upside, again, it's not the most realistic scenario, but it is the upside. So bear with me for a second, and let me tell you why I think some of these things are possible. Number one, let's talk about the opportunities in front of Treylon Burks. Let's look at Ryan Tannehill's pass attempts for the past 2 years per game. In 2020, 30 pass attempts per game. In 2021, 21 pass attempts per game.
Right.
So why don't we just meet in the middle and say he has 30.5 pass attempts per game, right? Derrick Henry's going to be a little bit more healthy, but they'll probably throw the ball more anyway because they can't really feed him the ball 40 times per game with his health concerns. So let's say he throws 30.5 pass attempts per game. Okay, we're on the same page. Now let's look at the vacated targets from this offense. Notable 2021 wide receivers that are gone. Okay,
right.
AJ Brown, 8.1 targets per game. Julio, 4.8, and you can see there's a bunch of cluster of random players who are no longer there either. So total vacated targets, from these 5 players alone, that's 21.2 targets missing. Pretty much the entire offense, at least players who really mattered. And the additions that they brought in, you can see Robert Woods at 7.6 targets per game, Austin Hooper at 3.8 targets per game. I personally, Badake, I don't believe that Robert Woods is going to see 7.6 targets per game coming off of that ACL. I more think he's probably going to get 6.5 targets per game, but let's just say he does get 7.6. I don't think that's realistic, but I'm trying to kind of give you guys a realistic take here. That leaves 9.8 targets per game on the table. So realistically, I do believe that Treylon Burks averages 7.5 targets per game as a rookie. All right. 7.5 targets per game. If he plays all 17 games, that is 127.5 targets on a 17-game season. Let's look at players last year who had similar targets and where they finished. Okay. How about DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, CeeDee Lamb? Obviously, widely different scenarios, okay, but all had very similar targets. If this is the year that Treylon Burks was going to have as far as target share goes, they had the same targets last year or within, 2 or 3 targets. So if I took all those players and averaged out their average finish last year, it was wide receiver 14. Okay. So I think this is a very realistic possibility when you look at the pure volume alone. The second thing I want to point out is that this team has had success with this skill set and body type. Who was my pro comp for Treylon Burks before the draft, Badake? Who was my pro comp for him?
It was A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown. So here we are. This is a team who knows how to utilize a weapon similar to A.J. Brown. Now, they are different players, yes, but you can actually use him like A.J., but you can also throw in splashes of other players in the NFL. You can use them in the X, the slot, screen, slants like you did with AJ. But how about the Debo and Cordero Patterson role? I'm curious to see how many other teams start to utilize players in that way. And I think Treylon is a prime candidate to be used in that way as well. Out of the backfield, sweeps, literally anywhere that you want to put him on the field. So, and if you're going to say, well, he's a rookie, is that possible? There's 2 things I want to say. Number one, let's go back and look at A.J. Brown's rookie season.
Right.
All right. As a rookie with a lot more competition on this team. Okay. A lot more competition for A.J. as a rookie there in Tennessee. He had over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and finished as a wide receiver 21. So I don't see why this is out of question. Now, if you guys are watching and say, well, Treylon Burks isn't an A.J. Brown type of talent. Now, if you don't see him that way, then you might not understand my take or believe what I'm saying. Right. But I do believe that he is that type of talent. The target share is absolutely going to be there. Again, I think I provided a safe floor, wide receiver 29 finish, and a safe upside. The upside is the best it will probably get, wide receiver 12.
Yeah. Treylon Burks is the guy. I think everyone is believing in him. It's going to be very interesting. Does this change with Malik in, out of curiosity?
To be honest, no, because I think if Malik comes in, I think the offense changes. And for example, the way I talked about them maybe using him in a Deebo Samuel role.
Okay.
So I think the opportunities will just be manufactured differently.
Okay. That makes sense.
And also, I would say this is a team we have to remember. I'm so glad you brought that up. This is a team we have to remember. They were first in the AFC last year. Do we really expect Malik to get work year one? I would argue that Tannehill has to implode. We'll see. We'll see.
All right. My first rookie breakout for 2022 is Sky Moore. Let him shoot right to the sky, my guy, because he's with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Sky with 2 Ys.
Look, obviously, let's just address the elephant in the room. Tyreek is gone. That's 130 plus vacant targets for this team, for Sky Moore. But yes, I understand Juju Smith is also on the team. So this is the way I envision this team breaking down, okay? There is really just, in my opinion, wide receiver 1 is going to be Juju, slot or the outside. Obviously, Juju is a slot wide receiver. That's where he got all his previous work. But I will not be surprised if they move him to the outside. Wide receiver 2, that is Sky Moore, whether that is the slot or the outside. I think he can do both. And then wide receiver 3 will be McCole Harmon and MVS going back and forth, splitting that, and obviously Travis Kelce. Okay? For years, what did this team need? They needed a wide receiver 2. They did not have a wide receiver 2. They tried to get all these different pieces. MVS, they got Pringle, or not MVS, McCole Harmon. They brought in Pringle, and it just it didn't work. Now with Tyreek gone, I do truly believe this can go either way. I will not be surprised if Juju is the guy. Don't get me wrong. But I won't be surprised at the end of the day, at the end of the season, Sky Moore can be, hey, he finished with more targets. He was technically the wide receiver 1. Okay? Yeah. Because this offense is wide open. It's kind of similar to what Zach did. I kind of broke down the target shares. Okay, in 2021, Tyreek killed 9.3 targets per game. And then, once again, it broke down. I broke it down every single person that had a target. Not every single person, but Pringle, Demarcus Robinson, Darrell Williams as well. Okay, that's 18.5 targets available moving into the 2022 season. Once again, Tyreek is leaving back 130-plus targets a year. Let's just assume Juju takes a 9.3, which is Tyreek Hill, and then Sky Moore takes the rest on. That is another still 9.2 targets. This is really up there, by the way. This is like extravagant. This is a lot of targets because why? Let's not forget this is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. This is one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL currently. Okay, so I do believe things could change. But even if you take, because right now, what's available, 9.2 targets per game for Sky Moore. Even if you take 2 targets away, you're like, you know what? I can see him averaging maybe 7 targets. He is still going to be a good wide receiver too. He's still going to finish, without a doubt, in a top 20, at least if you crunch the numbers, he will finish in the top 20 finish. Okay? And I'll break down the stats, his upside. And this is me just taking the 9.2. This is a wide receiver 12, right? Over 1,100 yards, 11 targets. He will be I feel like a top 12. He could even sneak into the top 10 finish. Why wouldn't he? Right? I mean, he's taking, quote unquote, Tyreek Hill's targets if that does happen. This could either be Juju or Sky Moore. And even his floor, which I took, which was the 7.2 targets, this is a wide receiver 24 finish for a rookie. I think this is fantastic. Still getting a good amount of targets, over 100 plus targets. But he's going to be a little bit less consistent moving into the season if he does finish wide receiver 24. But I truly believe this is probably the easiest win or breakout player moving forward, just based on this offense. And let me remind you, there was so many problems with the run game. And what did they do? They brought in Ronald Jones. That's not going to help. That's not going to change. That's not going to take less targets away from all the wide receivers around. That's not going to take away from anything. Ronald Jones is just more of like a 1-2 punch type of guy. You say, hey, let's punch it in. Darrell Williams is gone. Demarcus Robinson is gone. Byron Pringle is gone. I think this is really, really easy in my eyes. This is why I'm drafting Sky Moore everywhere, because I see the pathway to success. I see him being the breakout player this year.
Let me ask you this, just because I have a couple questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with this offense is, unlike Tennessee, they've brought in a lot of receivers to take that target share. They've brought in Juju. They brought in McCole Hardman, right? So it's not as if there is, like, some of those targets are already accounted for. And let me just ask you, are you slightly, at least, because it doesn't sound like it, but I am at least slightly worried that he becomes a rotational guy. And I think that's a really high floor. So I just wanted to ask you, that's like a really high floor for Sky.
I think, yeah, it is, because the targets that are available, it's crazy. If he is the rotational guy in wide receiver 3, a more realistic will probably be, 29, 28 wide receiver finish. I do believe he can get, at least Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs can get 3 top 30 guys. I don't believe so, because McCole Hardman is still if I'm not mistaken, on a 1-year contract. They brought in MVS for 1 year.
No, he's on a 3-year deal.
A 3-year? MVS on 3-year? Okay, so then Juju's still on a 1-year deal. We still need to figure out if they're going to continue with Juju. But I think Sky Moore is a long-term answer. I think they brought him in not to use him as Tyreek Hill, but they have that. He has those attributes. He can be the quick speed guy underneath, or he can stretch the field. But I do believe Juju is going to be going on the outside, where it will leave Sky Moore solidified more in the slot, in my opinion. But we don't know, because they move around. The Chiefs move around a lot. When you saw Tyreek on the field, he was everywhere. Okay. Jet sweeps, anything.
It's just questions that I have, because I feel like that's a really high floor for the amount of.
Well, I was just going based off those targets, and when I took the 2 targets away, it was still pretty high finish. So that's why I'm saying this. It just feels like it could happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think that it could happen.
Yeah.
My only worry is just, like, we've seen wide receivers who have stepped to this offense, and then it wasn't them. Tyreek was there. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't take that step. They were just rotational. Sky feels different. We'll see.
I guess
it feels different.
Just to close it out, do you believe Sky Moore is more talented than McCole or MVS?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay.
But
that's how I feel.
I also believe that MVS, that 3-year contract, I don't think that was by mistake. So it wouldn't surprise me if MVS became a really valuable redraft asset. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. My second breakout is Alec Pierce. Please keep in mind that he is my wide receiver 45 at the moment. All right. So I'm going to give you what a realistic breakout would look like for Alec Pierce. I love Alec Pierce, obviously playing in Indianapolis with Matt Ryan. Let's look at his upside and his floor. His upside for me is a wide receiver 31 finish. All right. You can see the numbers there: 65 receptions, 900 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I would say his floor is a wide receiver 47 finish, which is definitely not as sexy, but that is the floor that I'm looking at. 50 receptions on 85 targets, 700 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Okay. Wide receiver 47 for me is a floor. Let me explain why I think these things are possible, specifically the upside. Let's talk about the opportunities on this offense. All right. Let's look at Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz's pass attempts per game in 2021. Matt Ryan had 33 pass attempts per game. Carson Wentz had 30.5 pass attempts per game. So let's meet in the middle. Let's just say 32 pass attempts per game for this Colts team. All right. I think they trust Matt Ryan a lot more than they trust Carson Wentz. So I do believe that they will throw the ball a little bit more. They want to be a more complete team, and you don't want to rely on the run as much as they did last year. Yes, Jonathan Taylor was incredible. He was their offense, but you want to be a dynamic offense. So let's say 32 pass attempts per game. Zach Pascal is gone, as well as T.Y. Hilton. Together, both of their targets, that equals 8 targets per game that they are now missing from this offense. Now, look, if T.Y. Hilton resigns, that could be something that we need to talk about. But at the same time, I believe he's going to be 32 or 33. So it is time to start getting some youth into this team. So they didn't really bring in anyone, by the way. I mean, Alec Pierce is who they brought in. If you look at that roster, there is no other wide receiver that they brought in this offseason. So realistically, I think it's a realistic target for Alec Pierce to get 6 targets per game. 6 targets per game seems very realistic to me. That's 102 targets on a 17-game season. So same thing I did with A.J. Brown. I looked at players last year who got around 102 targets on the year and where they finished. Amari Cooper, Devonta Smith, Christian Kirk, Laviska Shenault. I threw in Laviska just to make sure that was a little even there, okay?
Okay.
The average between these guys was a wide receiver 35 finish. So keeping in mind that Alec Pierce is my wide receiver 45, I would consider this a breakout. If he finishes wide receiver 35, yes, that is a breakout for me for Alec Pierce, all right? And the last thing I want to talk about is just Matt Ryan and what he means for your fantasy wide receivers. Let's look at Matt Ryan's top 2 wide receivers in his offense since 2017, all right? In 2017, Julio was a wide receiver 7, and Mohamed Sanu was a wide receiver 29. In 2018, Julio was a 4, Calvin Ridley was a 22. In 2019, Julio was a wide receiver 3, Calvin Ridley wide receiver 27. And then in 2020, yes, Julio took a step back, but in points per game, he finished as a wide receiver 14 and Calvin as a wide receiver 5. So have to keep in mind that the offenses will be different. He will not be throwing the ball as much as he did in Atlanta. However, this is a quarterback that we can easily point to and say there's a history of him supporting multiple wide receivers. He is capable of doing that. He can still play at, most people believe, at a Pro Bowl level. So Alec Pierce, for me, I do think that there is possibility for an upside, for a breakout. And I think the upside and the floor I brought for most of these players, I realistically see finishes in between these numbers. Like, that's just the upside and floor that I'm presenting. So for me, if we do see a wide receiver 35 finish for Alec Pierce this year, to me, that's a breakout, considering where you're drafting him in rookie drafts, in startup drafts, and the ADP that you can currently get him for. So
yeah,
I like Alec Pierce.
Alec Pierce is a very interesting player. It's going to be interesting to see how this offense is going to operate now with Matt Ryan, who is, I think, just a better passer in general, and hopefully he can spread the ball out a little bit more evenly. I mean, we saw that. He, like you said, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, he can make 2 people fantasy relevant. Very interesting.
He's been doing it.
All right, my second and final breakout of this video is Jalen Tolbert. And I think everyone can envision this. Everyone can see it happening. Amari Cooper is gone. CeeDee Lamb steps up to the wide receiver 1. They did sign Michael Gallup to this 5-year contract for essentially pennies if you really break down this contract.
It's a really cheap deal, yeah.
Yeah, so I see this as like they're going to go head-to-head week 1 in camp.
Totally.
To say, hey, who's our true wide receiver 2? Who's going to take the Amari role? Because CeeDee Lamb, I believe, stays in the slot, but he becomes a wide receiver 1. But who's going to be on the outside? Who's going to be our Amari Cooper? And if you really break it down, Michael Gallup and Jalen Tolbert are the exact same player. Coming out of college, the way they're built and everything. Okay, Michael Gallup 40 time 4.1, and then Jalen Tolbert 4.49.
4.51. 4.1 would be a
4.51. 4.51 for Michael Gallup. Height, they're both 6'1", both nearly weigh 200 pounds. 200 pounds for Michael Gallup, 194 pounds for Jalen Tolbert, and both of their verticals are 36. Okay, they are the exact same player. They both played on the outside. Michael Gallup, we saw a little glimpse of what he did this past year. Even their senior year in college, they put up the nearly identical numbers. With over 1,400 yards per in their senior season with 8 touchdowns. I personally think they are going to be fighting it out. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, Amari Cooper leaves. It was a little bit skewed, so I went to when he was healthy, okay, because he was averaging like 6.5 targets per game. So when healthy, when playing every single game and being truly targeted, he averages 8.1 targets per game. That is what now CeeDee Lamb, the expectation is CeeDee Lamb could get. Not saying he's going to get that. And then obviously they get rid of Garrett Wilson, Cedric Wilson, and then obviously Michael Gallup is there, which he was averaging 7.5 targets this past year. So I do believe that kind of splits. So that means they're both going to get 6 targets per game potentially to see who is truly that wide receiver 1. So for me, I do believe it. Plus, this is all based on value. This is all based on who you believe in, who's more talented. And another thing I want to say is that Michael Gallup signed a 5-year contract. Jalen Tolbert just signed a 4-year contract. I mean, you're not losing here. Like, it doesn't really matter what happens, but I do believe Jalen Tolbert could be the more talented guy moving forward. So the way I envision this going, I see Jalen Tolbert finishing is what CeeDee Lamb did, and I gave him a little grace, gave myself a little grace. CeeDee Lamb finished wide receiver 22 his rookie season. That was with Amari Cooper. That's how I envision Jalen Tolbert finishing this year. But once again, I gave myself some grace, so I gave him his upside as wide receiver 25. Okay, and that feels a little bit more comfortable to me because once again, if he takes on the Amari Cooper role, which is CeeDee Lamb, I think obviously Jalen Tolbert takes the CeeDee Lamb numbers. So now he goes to wide receiver 25. And then his floor for me is just wide receiver 31. That's pretty safe. That's what basically Devonta Smith finished his rookie year this past year, wide receiver 30, Devonta Smith finish. So I think this feels really comfortable. And then I think this is going to be a great breakout for this year. And for year 2, we are going to be talking and raving about this guy. So I do believe you guys should get him now. Yeah. So he is going to be one of the best players, a good wide receiver 2 slot in years to come.
Yeah, I love Jalen Tolbert. Love the talent. I just want to clarify, though, if we're comparing him to Devonta Smith was a first-round pick.
No, I'm saying just
I
the way
feel
he
like
finished.
these are really high floors is all I'm saying.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Would it surprise you if we see Tolbert break out last couple games, and not really finish this high? I'm trying to see where your range of outcomes are.
The reason I am saying they are finishing this way because I was just going based on this for him based on this offense. Okay. So I was looking at how this offense is operating, and if he does fill in those slots with what CeeDee did this past year, I think it's actually realistic. It is probably a little bit. That's why I gave myself grace. I said, and if I really put the numbers into it, with every target that CeeDee was getting his rookie year, he would finish wide receiver 22, wide receiver 20. You would average on there, which, once again,
my only caveat there is that CeeDee Lamb and Devonta
both whole
first-round picks, and
it's a whole nother talent.
The talent is different. The demand of the target share is different.
And I think.
What if Tolbert just takes over the Cedric Wilson shares? I
actually don't.
It's just questions that I'm throwing out to myself as I'm looking at these players.
For sure. What's weird is that I actually don't see that. I think they're here to find who that wide receiver 2 is, and I don't think they know who that is. And Cedric is gone. So maybe if he does take those target shares, I think Gallup takes a hit in targets, and then it's split at least. 5 targets for Jalen Tolbert, and then 6 targets for Michael Gallup, which still is not a terrible finish.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely like Tolbert. Love the offense that he's in. The reality is not all of these guys are going to break out. There will be players who don't have these kind of seasons, but we are calling shots. We're making big predictions here. So comment down below. Let us know who you think is going to break out as a rookie. And, feel free to disagree with our arguments. That's fine.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLandFam.